The morning sun cast long shadows across the marble floors of Valdoria Palace as Princess Elena stood before the grand mirror in her chambers. Her hands trembled slightly as she fastened the diamond necklace that had belonged to her grandmother. Today was different from any other day in her 28 years of life. Today, she would have to say goodbye to everything she held dear. The letter from the International Medical Council had arrived 3 weeks ago, written on official paper with gold seals. Elena had been selected for an experimental treatment program in Switzerland, a program that could save her life but would require her to leave Valdoria for an unknown period. The rare blood disorder that had been quietly weakening her for months had finally reached a point where action was necessary. Prince Marcus had been in the gardens when she received the news. Elena had watched him through the window, laughing with their young nephew as they fed the royal swans. His joy had been so pure, so untouched by the shadow, that had been growing over their lives. She had stood there for nearly an hour, knowing that once she showed him the letter, their world would change forever. The palace staff moved quietly through the halls, their usual chatter replaced by respectful whispers. Word had spread quickly among those closest to the royal family. Elena's lady-in-waiting, Margaret, had been crying softly as she helped pack the princess's belongings. Even the usually composed butler, James, had cleared his throat more than usual when bringing the morning tea. Elena walked to the window overlooking the courtyard where she had spent countless afternoons with Marcus. They had been married for 5 years, but had known each other since childhood. Their families had been friends long before any talk of arranged marriages, and what had started as a political alliance had grown into a love story that the people of Valdoria cherished. The princess remembered their wedding day, how Marcus had whispered to her during the ceremony that he would love her through every season of their lives. Neither of them had imagined that one of those seasons would come so soon and be so difficult. The doctors had explained that her condition was serious but treatable, with the right care. The treatment center in Switzerland specialized in cases like hers, but the process could take months, possibly a year. A soft knock interrupted her thoughts. "Your Highness," came Margaret's gentle voice, "Prince Marcus is requesting your presence in the library." Elena nodded, taking one last look at herself in the mirror. She had chosen a simple blue dress, Marcus's favorite color on her. Her brown hair was pulled back softly, and despite her illness, she still carried herself with the grace expected of Valdoria's beloved princess. The library had always been their special place. It was where Marcus had first told her he loved her, where they had planned their future together, and where they often retreated when the pressures of royal life became too much. The room was filled with afternoon light, and thousands of books lined the walls from floor to ceiling. Marcus stood with his back to her, looking out at the gardens. His broad shoulders were tense, and Elena could see that his hands were clasped tightly behind him. He was still wearing his morning riding clothes, suggesting he had come directly from the stables when he learned of her decision. "You've decided to go," he said without turning around. His voice was steady, but Elena knew him well enough to hear the pain underneath. "The doctors say it's my best chance," Elena replied, stepping closer to him. "Dr. Harrison believes the treatment program could give me a normal life again." Marcus finally turned to face her. His blue eyes, usually bright with humor and warmth, were clouded with worry and unshed tears. "When do you leave?" "Tomorrow morning," Elena whispered. "I wanted to tell you myself, properly." The prince ran his hand through his dark hair, a gesture Elena recognized from their years together. He did it when he was trying to solve a problem that seemed impossible. "There has to be another way. We could bring the specialists here, build a treatment center in Valdoria." Elena had considered the same thing, but the doctors had been clear. The equipment and expertise needed were only available at the Swiss facility. "Marcus, you know I've explored every option. This program has helped patients from all over the world. It's experimental, but it's working. Prince Marcus walked to their reading chairs by the fireplace, the same chairs where they spent quiet evenings together. He sat down heavily, suddenly looking older than his 32 years. "How long?" he asked. "They don't know exactly. Dr. Mitchell says the treatment could take 6 months to a year. Depending on how I respond?" Elena joined him, sitting in her usual chair. "But Marcus, this isn't goodbye forever. It's just temporary." The prince looked at her with such intensity that Elena felt her breath catch. "Elena, what if something goes wrong? What if you're so far away and I can't reach you?" She had wondered the same thing during the sleepless nights since receiving the letter. The thought of being alone in a foreign country, away from Marcus and everyone who loved her, was terrifying. But the alternative was even worse. "Then you'll know that I fought for our future together, that I didn't give up on the life we planned." Marcus reached for her hand, intertwining their fingers as he had done thousands of times before. "The people of Valdoria need you. I need you." "And that's exactly why I have to do this," Elena said firmly. "I want to be the princess Valdoria deserves. I want to be the wife you deserve. This treatment could give me the strength to fulfill all my duties, to maybe even give you the children we've dreamed about." They had spoken often about starting a family, but Elena's illness had made it impossible. The doctors had warned that pregnancy could worsen her condition significantly. The Swiss treatment, if successful, could change everything. The afternoon light began to fade as they sat together in comfortable silence. Outside, the palace gardeners were tending to the rose gardens that Elena loved so much. She had requested that Margaret bring her a single white rose from her favorite bush to press in her journal as a reminder of home. "I've arranged for daily calls," Elena said eventually, "and I'll write to you every day. Dr. Mitchell says patients are allowed visits from family after the first month." Marcus squeezed her hand tighter. "I'll visit every month, even if I have to fly there myself." Elena smiled at his determination. Marcus had never been comfortable with flying, but she knew he would overcome that fear for her. "The Council of Ministers will need you here. Valdoria has so many important matters coming up." "Let them handle it," Marcus said with unusual sharpness. "You're more important than any political meeting or trade agreement." "No, I'm not," Elena said gently but firmly. "We both took vows to serve Valdoria. You can't abandon your duties because I'm going away for treatment." Prince Marcus stood up abruptly and walked to the window again. Elena could see the tension in his body, the way he was fighting to maintain his composure. She had seen him like this only once before, when his father had been seriously ill. "Marcus," Elena called softly. He turned back to her, and this time she could see tears in his eyes. "I'm supposed to protect you? That's what I promised when we married. How can I protect you from hundreds of miles away?" Elena rose from her chair and walked to him, placing her hands on his chest. She could feel his heart beating rapidly under her palms. "You'll protect me by being strong, by leading Valdoria with wisdom and kindness. You'll protect me by being the man I fell in love with, so that when I come home, I'll find you exactly as I left you." The prince wrapped his arms around her, pulling her close. Elena breathed in his familiar scent, memorizing the feeling of being held by him. Tomorrow she would wake up in a different country, in a sterile medical facility, surrounded by strangers who spoke different languages. "Promise me something," Marcus whispered into her hair. "Anything. Promise me you'll fight. No matter how difficult the treatment becomes, no matter how homesick you feel, promise me you'll remember that I'm here waiting for you." Elena pulled back to look at him directly. "I promise. And you have to promise me something too." "What?" "Promise me you'll live while I'm gone. Not just exist, not just go through the motions of being prince. Promise me you'll find moments of happiness, that you'll laugh with your friends, that you'll take care of yourself." Marcus nodded, though Elena could see how difficult it was for him to make that promise. "I'll try. That's all I ask." As evening approached, they were interrupted by a gentle knock. James entered with their dinner, served on the small table by the window as they had requested. It would be their last meal together for a long time. They ate slowly, savoring not just the food, but each other's company. Elena noticed how Marcus kept looking at her, as if trying to memorize every detail of her face. She was doing the same thing, storing away the sound of his laughter when she told him a funny story about Margaret's attempts to pack her entire wardrobe. After dinner, they walked through the palace gardens together. The evening air was cool and sweet with the scent of jasmine. Elena had always loved these walks, when they could be just themselves, not the Prince and Princess of Valdoria, but simply Marcus and Elena, two people in love. They stopped at the fountain where Marcus had proposed 3 years earlier. The water sparkled in the moonlight, and Elena remembered how nervous he had been that night, how he had stumbled over his carefully prepared speech before finally just telling her that he couldn't imagine his life without her. "When you come back," Marcus said, breaking the comfortable silence, "I want to show you the new wing of the Children's Hospital. It should be finished by then." Elena smiled. The hospital project had been one of their joint initiatives, something they had planned together. "I'd like that. We could have the opening ceremony together." They continued their walk, hand in hand, talking about future plans as if Elena weren't leaving in the morning. It was their way of affirming that this separation was temporary, that they had a future to look forward to. As they returned to the palace, Elena felt a mixture of sadness and determination. Tomorrow would be one of the most difficult days of her life, but tonight she was still home, still with the man she loved, still surrounded by everything familiar and dear to her. The princess knew that the hardest part was yet to come. Tomorrow, she would have to find the words to say goodbye, words that would somehow express 5 years of marriage and a lifetime of love. She would have to be strong enough to walk away from Marcus, knowing it might be many months before she saw him again. But tonight, she was still Princess Elena of Valdoria, walking through her gardens with her husband, and that was enough. The first light of dawn crept through the heavy curtains of the royal bedroom, casting a soft golden glow across the room where Elena and Marcus had spent their final night together. Elena had barely slept, her mind racing between memories of their life together and fears about the unknown journey ahead. Marcus had held her close throughout the night, his arm never leaving her waist, as if he could somehow keep her safe just by not letting go. Elena slowly turned in his arms to face him. Marcus was already awake, his blue eyes watching her with such tenderness that it made her heart ache. Neither of them spoke for several minutes, both knowing that once they acknowledged the morning, their time together would officially begin its countdown. "Good morning, my love," Marcus finally whispered, his voice hoarse from sleep and emotion. "Good morning," Elena replied, reaching up to trace the line of his jaw with her fingertip. She had done this countless mornings before, but today the simple gesture felt precious beyond measure. A soft knock on the door interrupted their quiet moment. "Your Highnesses," came Margaret's gentle voice. "The car will be ready in 2 hours." 2 hours. Elena felt her stomach tighten. In 2 hours, she would be sitting in a car driving away from everything she had ever known and loved. In 2 hours, she would begin a journey that could save her life, but would certainly break her heart, at least temporarily. Marcus sat up in bed, running his hands through his dark hair. "I should probably dress and meet with James about the arrangements." Elena nodded, though she wanted to ask him to stay, to spend every remaining minute together. But she knew Marcus needed these final preparations to feel like he was doing something useful, something that would help her. After Marcus left to dress in his study, Elena allowed Margaret to help her prepare for the journey. The older woman had been with the royal family for 15 years, and Elena could see that she was struggling to maintain her professional composure. "Margaret," Elena said gently, as her lady-in-waiting helped her into a comfortable traveling dress. "I need you to take care of Prince Marcus while I'm away." Margaret's hands stilled for a moment. "Your Highness, it's not my place to—" "It is if I'm asking you to," Elena interrupted kindly. "He's going to need reminding to eat proper meals and to rest. You know how he gets when he's worried about something important." The older woman nodded, tears threatening to spill from her eyes. "He loves you so very much, Your Highness. We all do." Elena hugged Margaret tightly, something that would have been unusual in normal circumstances, but today was anything but normal. "I love all of you too. This palace, this country, this family. It's all coming with me in my heart." After breakfast, which neither Elena nor Marcus could eat much of, they walked together to the main entrance, where the royal car waited. Elena's luggage had already been loaded, looking strangely small for such a life-changing journey. The palace staff had gathered to see her off. Cook had prepared a basket of Elena's favorite biscuits for the journey. The head gardener had picked fresh flowers from her beloved rose garden. Even the stable master had come, hat in hand, to wish her well. These people had been part of Elena's daily life for years, and saying goodbye to each of them felt like leaving pieces of herself behind. Dr. Harrison, the royal physician, was also present to accompany Elena on the first part of her journey. He would ensure she was settled safely at the treatment center before returning to Valdoria. His presence was comforting, but Elena knew that once he left, she would truly be alone. Marcus had been quiet during these farewells, standing close to Elena, but letting her have these moments with the people who had become like family to her. She could see the tension in his shoulders, the way his jaw was set with determination not to break down in front of everyone. Finally, there was no one left to say goodbye to except Marcus. They stood facing each other beside the car, the morning sun warm on their faces. Elena had thought about this moment for weeks, had practiced different things she might say, but now that it was here, words seemed inadequate. "I have something for you," Marcus said, reaching into his jacket pocket. He pulled out a small velvet box that Elena recognized immediately. It was the box that had held her grandmother's ring, the ring Marcus had given her when he proposed. Elena opened the box with trembling fingers, but instead of the ring, she found a small silver locket she had never seen before. It was delicate and beautiful, with intricate engravings of roses around the edges. "Open it," Marcus said softly. Inside the locket was a tiny photograph of the two of them from their wedding day, laughing together during their first dance. On the opposite side was engraved, "Through every season of our lives, M." Elena felt tears well up in her eyes as she remembered Marcus speaking those exact words during their wedding ceremony. "Marcus, it's beautiful." He took the locket from her hands and gently fastened it around her neck. "Now you'll have me with you, even when I can't be there myself." Elena touched the locket, feeling its weight against her chest like a piece of home. "I wish I had something like this to give you." Marcus smiled, the first real smile she had seen from him since yesterday. "You already have. You gave me 5 years of the most extraordinary love I could ever imagine. That's going to sustain me through however long you're away." The driver cleared his throat gently, indicating that they needed to leave soon to make Elena's flight. "I need to tell you something," Elena said, her voice becoming stronger despite her tears. "Something important that I want you to remember every day while I'm gone." Marcus stepped closer, taking both of her hands in his. "When I was first diagnosed," Elena began, "I was terrified. Not just of being sick, but of not being able to be the wife you deserved, the Princess Valdoria needed. I felt like I was failing everyone I loved. Marcus started to speak, but Elena gently squeezed his hands to ask him to let her finish. But then I realized something. The reason I'm fighting this illness isn't just because I want to live. It's because I want to live with you. Every treatment I endure, every difficult day I face in Switzerland, every moment I feel homesick or scared, I'm going to remember that I'm fighting for us. For our future together. Marcus's eyes filled with tears, but he nodded for her to continue. You make me brave, Marcus. Your love makes me stronger than I ever thought I could be. So when you miss me, when you're worried about me, I want you to remember that every breath I take, every day I fight to get better, it's because I love you more than life itself. Elena paused, taking a deep breath before continuing with the words that she knew would stay with both of them forever. And I need you to know that no matter what happens, no matter how long this takes, you have given me the most beautiful life imaginable. These 5 years with you have been worth more than 100 years without you. If something were to go wrong... Elena, don't... Marcus interrupted, but she pressed on. If something were to go wrong... I need you to know that I have no regrets. Loving you, being loved by you, being your wife, it's been the greatest privilege of my life. You've made me feel like a queen, not because of any crown or title, but because of the way you look at me every morning like I'm the most precious thing in your world. By now, both of them were crying openly. Marcus pulled Elena into his arms, holding her so tightly that she could barely breathe. Promise me, Elena whispered against his chest, that if anything happens to me, you'll find happiness again. Promise me you won't spend your life mourning what we lost instead of celebrating what we had. Marcus pulled back to look at her, his face wet with tears. Elena, nothing is going to happen to you. You're going to get better, and you're going to come home. And we're going to grow old together in this palace. Promise me anyway, Elena insisted. I need to know that you'll live fully, even if I can't be there to live with you. Marcus was quiet for a long moment, struggling with the promise she was asking him to make. Finally, he nodded. I promise, but only if you promise me something in return. Anything. Promise me that when you're in Switzerland, when the treatment is difficult or when you feel alone, you'll remember this moment. You'll remember how much I love you, how proud I am of your courage, how desperately I'm waiting for you to come home to me. I promise, Elena said through her tears. Marcus cupped her face in his hands, wiping away her tears with his thumbs. Elena, my darling Elena, you are the love of my life. You are my queen, my best friend, my everything. And I will love you through every season of our lives, just like I promised. He kissed her then, deeply and tenderly, pouring all of his love and hope and fear into that single kiss. Elena kissed him back with equal intensity, trying to memorize the taste of his lips, the feeling of his hands in her hair. When they finally broke apart, Elena knew it was time to go. She couldn't bear to draw out this goodbye any longer, knowing that each additional minute would only make it harder for both of them. I love you, Marcus, she said, her voice clear and strong despite her tears. I love you today, I'll love you tomorrow, and I'll love you for every day that I fight to come back to you. I love you too, Marcus replied, his voice breaking. More than words can say. Elena turned toward the car, but Marcus caught her hand one last time. Elena, he said urgently, you're the strongest person I know. You're going to beat this and you're going to come home, and when you do, I'll be right here waiting for you. Elena nodded, unable to speak anymore without completely breaking down. She gave Marcus one final kiss on the cheek, whispered, "Until we meet again," and stepped into the car. As the car began to move, Elena looked back through the rear window. Marcus stood in the exact same spot, watching her leave, his hand raised in farewell. Palace staff surrounded him, offering silent support, but Elena could see that he only had eyes for her. The car turned the corner, and the palace disappeared from view. Elena touched the locket at her throat and allowed herself to cry for everything she was leaving behind and for the uncertain journey ahead. But even through her tears, she felt a fierce determination growing in her heart. She would survive this treatment. She would get better. She would return to Marcus and to Valdoria stronger than ever before. Her farewell words hadn't been a goodbye. They had been a promise to fight, to survive, and to love him through every season of their lives, no matter how difficult this season might be. 6 weeks had passed since Elena's departure, and the palace felt different to everyone who lived and worked there. The corridors seemed quieter, the meals more formal, and even the gardens looked somehow less vibrant without the princess's daily walks among the flowers. Prince Marcus had thrown himself into his royal duties with an intensity that worried those closest to him. He attended every council meeting, reviewed every document, and made himself available for public appearances that he had previously shared with Elena. Margaret had kept her promise to look after him, ensuring he ate regular meals and got some rest, though she could see the toll that Elena's absence was taking on him. Every evening at precisely 7 o'clock, Marcus would retreat to the library for his daily call with Elena. These conversations had become the highlight of his day, the 1 hour when the weight on his shoulders seemed to lift slightly. James had strict instructions that the prince was not to be disturbed during these calls under any circumstances. Tonight was no different. Marcus sat in Elena's chair, the phone cradled against his ear, listening to his wife's voice describe her day at the treatment center. "The doctors are pleased with my progress," Elena was saying, her voice sounding stronger than it had in the early weeks. "Dr. Schmidt thinks I might be able to start the second phase of treatment earlier than expected." Marcus smiled, the first genuine smile that had crossed his face all day. "That's wonderful news. How are you feeling?" "Tired, but good tired, if that makes sense. Like my body is working hard to get better rather than working hard just to function." Elena paused, and Marcus could hear the sound of pages turning. "I've been keeping a journal like you suggested, writing down everything I want to tell you when I get home." "What kinds of things?" Marcus asked, settling deeper into the chair that smelled faintly of Elena's perfume. "Today I wrote about the Swiss Alps. You can see them from my room window, and they remind me of the mountains we visited on our honeymoon. I wrote about how I want to take you hiking there someday, when I'm strong enough." Marcus felt his heart swell with hope. In the early weeks, Elena's calls had been filled with homesickness and fear, but gradually he had begun to hear something else in her voice, determination, and even moments of optimism. "I'd like that very much," Marcus said, "though you know I'm not much of a hiker." Elena's laugh came through the phone, bright and familiar. "I remember. You complained the entire time about your boots being uncomfortable." "They were uncomfortable," Marcus protested, grinning despite himself. "I still maintain that royal feet weren't meant for mountain climbing." They talked for another 45 minutes, sharing details of their separate days, making plans for Elena's return, and simply enjoying each other's voices. When it came time to say goodbye, neither of them wanted to hang up, just as always. "Marcus," Elena said softly, "I need to tell you something." "What is it?" "I'm proud of you. Margaret writes to me about how well you're managing everything, how the people of Valdoria are seeing what an incredible leader you are. I always knew you had it in you, but now everyone else knows too." Marcus felt unexpected tears prick his eyes. "I'm just trying to keep everything together until you come home." "No, you're not just keeping things together, you're making them better. The new education initiative you proposed, the expansion of the hospital program, those are your ideas, Marcus. You're not just maintaining what we built together, you're building on it." After they hung up, Marcus sat in the quiet library for a long time, holding Elena's words close to his heart. She was right about one thing. He had discovered strengths in himself that he hadn't known existed. But what she didn't understand was that those strengths came from loving her, from wanting to be the man she deserved to come home to. Meanwhile, in Switzerland, Elena was settling into her evening routine at the treatment center. Her room was small but comfortable, with the mountain view she had described to Marcus and a collection of photographs from home arranged on her bedside table. The treatment was challenging, often leaving her exhausted and sometimes discouraged. But the medical team was excellent, and Elena had made friends with several other patients who were fighting similar battles. There was Maria, a young mother from Italy who made everyone laugh with her stories about her 3 young children. There was Robert, an elderly gentleman from Germany who played chess with Elena in the evenings and reminded her of her late grandfather. Elena had also formed a special bond with her primary nurse, Anna, a woman close to her own age who had become part confidant, part cheerleader. Anna understood better than most what it meant to be far from home and fighting for your life. "How was your call with your husband tonight?" Anna asked, as she helped Elena prepare for bed. "Good. Really good, actually. I think we're both adjusting to this new normal." Elena touched the locket at her throat, which she never removed. "It's strange how love changes when you're apart. It becomes more intentional, more precious." Anna smiled knowingly. "Distance has a way of showing us what really matters. Marcus is stronger than he thinks he is," Elena continued, settling into her bed. "I sometimes wonder if I held him back from reaching his full potential as a leader." "From what you've told me about him, I doubt that's true," Anna said gently. "But maybe being apart is giving you both a chance to discover parts of yourselves you didn't know existed." Elena considered this as Anna dimmed the lights and left her alone with her thoughts. It was true that the separation was teaching her things about herself. She was discovering a resilience she hadn't known she possessed, an ability to find hope even in the most difficult moments. 2 weeks later, Elena received news that changed everything. Dr. Schmidt called her into his office with results from her latest round of tests, and the smile on his face told her what she hoped to hear before he even spoke. "Princess Elena," he said in his accented English, "I have excellent news. Your body is responding to the treatment even better than we hoped. If this progress continues, we may be able to complete your program in 3 months, instead of 6 to 8. Elena felt her knees go weak with relief and joy. "Are you certain?" "Of course, we must continue to monitor closely, but yes, I am very optimistic. You have been an exemplary patient, and your positive attitude has contributed greatly to your recovery." Elena's first thought was of Marcus, and how his face would light up when she told him the news. Her second thought was of Valdoria, and how good it would feel to walk through the palace gardens again. That evening's phone call was different from all the others. "Marcus," Elena said, barely able to contain her excitement, "I have something wonderful to tell you." "What is it?" Marcus asked, and Elena could hear the smile in his voice at her obvious joy. "Dr. Schmidt says if my progress continues at this rate, I could be home in 3 months instead of 6 or 8. The silence on the other end of the phone lasted so long that Elena wondered if the connection had been lost. "Marcus? Are you there?" "I'm here," Marcus said, his voice thick with emotion. "Elena, are you saying you're really getting better?" "I'm saying that your wife is fighting her way back to you just like I promised." Marcus's laugh was joyful and tearful at the same time. "I knew you would. I never doubted it for a second." "Liar," Elena said fondly. "You doubted it plenty. But you never let me hear that doubt, and that made all the difference. Elena, I love you so much. I'm so proud of you, so incredibly proud. I love you too. And Marcus, Start planning our second honeymoon because when I come home, I want to celebrate everything. My recovery, your leadership, our love that survived this test. Where would you like to go? Marcus asked, already sounding like he was making mental plans. Anywhere, as long as I'm with you. Though maybe somewhere without mountains since you're so opposed to hiking. Marcus laughed, and the sound was music to Elena's ears. Deal. No mountains. But I reserve the right to choose somewhere romantic and secluded where I can spend days just looking at you and remembering how lucky I am. The weeks that followed brought a new energy to both Elena's recovery and Marcus's leadership of Valdoria. Elena threw herself into her treatment with renewed vigor, determined to make the most of every day that brought her closer to home. She started taking longer walks around the treatment center grounds, building up her strength for the active life she planned to resume. Marcus, meanwhile, began making preparations for Elena's return. He worked with the palace staff to plan a small, private celebration, nothing too overwhelming for Elena as she transitioned back to royal life, but meaningful enough to show how much she had been missed. He also found himself thinking about the future in ways he hadn't allowed himself to during Elena's absence. The doctors had indicated that once her treatment was complete, they could begin thinking about starting the family they had always wanted. The thought filled Marcus with a joy so intense it sometimes took his breath away. 3 months after Elena's departure, Marcus stood in the same spot where he had said goodbye to her. But this time, instead of a departure, he was waiting for an arrival. The royal car would bring Elena home from the airport any moment. The palace staff had gathered again, their faces bright with anticipation instead of shadowed with sadness. Margaret stood beside Marcus, dabbing at her eyes with a handkerchief. Even the usually stoic James was smiling. When the car finally appeared in the distance, Marcus felt his heart begin to race. Elena was coming home. His wife, his queen, his best friend was returning to him healthy and whole. The car stopped, and Marcus held his breath as the door opened. Elena stepped out, looking radiant despite the long journey. She was still thin from her treatment, but there was a vitality in her face that had been missing for months before she left. Her eyes found Marcus immediately, and the smile that spread across her face was brighter than the morning sun. She walked toward him, not running but moving with purpose and joy. Marcus met her halfway, and when he swept her into his arms, the palace staff broke into spontaneous applause. "I kept my promise," Elena whispered in his ear as he held her. "I fought my way back to you." "And I kept mine," Marcus replied, his voice thick with emotion. "I lived fully, but I never stopped waiting for you." They held each other for a long moment, surrounded by the people who loved them, in the place they both called home. Elena's farewell words months ago had spoken of love that would endure through every season of their lives. Now, as they stood together in the palace courtyard, they both understood that they had survived winter and emerged into spring. The future stretched before them, full of promise and possibility. There would be more challenges, of course. Life would see to that. But they had learned something precious about their love. It was strong enough to survive separation, brave enough to face uncertainty, and deep enough to transform them both. Elena touched the locket at her throat, the same locket Marcus had given her on the day she left. Inside was still the photograph from their wedding day, but now it represented not just who they had been, but who they had become through trial and perseverance. "Welcome home, my love," Marcus said, taking her hand as they walked together toward the palace entrance. "It's good to be home," Elena replied, squeezing his hand. "It's very good to be home." As they disappeared into the palace together, the staff began to disperse, each returning to their duties with lighter hearts. The prince and princess of Valdoria were together again, and all was right in their small corner of the world. Elena's journey had ended not with an ending, but with a beginning. the beginning of the rest of their lives together, stronger and more grateful for their love than ever before.